Hello and welcome to a new retrospective where today I'm going to be covering a game that was released on Zzap 64 and their cover mount back in issue 89. So this was a magazine that was released back in October 1992, and it was around about the time when the 64 was sort of dying out commercially, so the full price games were becoming less and less, and it was more about budget games coming out. And the magazines themselves, they started to focus more on the cover mounts, and Zzap 64 in particular started to put two tapes on the front of the magazine. So for less than the price of a budget game, you would get these two tapes absolutely rammed full of games, which was absolutely great for me at the time. And this particular issue was really good. I mean, you had fantastic games on there, such as Stormlord and Ranorama, and all these other games as well. And the one that really kind of particularly stood out for me was this game called Cops, which was a reader game that was created by a chap called Alf Yngve back in 1992. And so Alf Yngve, many of you will know today as pretty much the king of the shoot 'em up construction kit tool. So the shoot 'em up construction kit was a game creator package that was created by Sensible Software back in 1987. Absolutely fantastic bit of kit. So if you didn't know how to program, this kit allowed you to create your own vertically scrolling or push scroll or static screen games with complete ease. It was really easy to use. And the games that came with the package were incredibly, really good. I mean, you had like a game called Slap and Tickle, which was a clone of Slap Fight. You had like an Outlaw game, which was I think a clone of what was it called? Gunsmoke, I think. Just it was really good, but unfortunately, it kind of in the early days, there was kind of like a flood of these games which all felt exactly the same and didn't really make best use of the tool. They were kind of almost sometimes used to rip off the games that came with the pack with the tool set. They used the same sound effects and didn't really have much innovation at all. I think there were a couple of decent games that came out that people would push the tool, but at the time I hadn't really seen that many of them at all. There was a couple of cover mount games released on your Commodore magazine which were pretty terrible, really basic created games, and I wasn't much of a fan of them, to be honest, either. So it was only really the games that were built in that really stood out. But Cops was completely different. It was the first time I'd ever seen a game that was created by Alf Yngve, and it was such a clever game for so many reasons. There were so many sort of innovations and things that I'd never seen done in a shoot 'em up construction kit game. Done for the first time I've ever seen certain effects, bits and pieces that you sort of take for granted in shoot 'em up construction kit games these days. So these days people still create a lot of games in the tool, and there's still innovations today. But at the time, this was the kind of first time that I'd seen the tool being sort of pushed beyond its standard capabilities or doing things that it wasn't really intended to do. So the aim today is I'm going to kind of talk through this game and sort of highlight some of the things that really blew me away and what it kind of inspired me to dig out the tool myself and actually try and make some of my own games. Okay. So here we've got our main Cops character. It shoots bullets. We have a second player available as well, which can shoot a flamethrower, which has slightly slower bullets but have wider coverage. So the first thing that really kind of stood out for me was the quality of the sprites and the backgrounds that Alf had done. So the trucks here were extremely well drawn. The backgrounds, although it's repeating, were very well done as well. And the sprites, within their sort of limited amount of animation frames, are very well drawn. They look very cartoony and well defined. Not sort of out of place from what you would see in a budget or a full price game at the time. So Alf was clearly a very talented artist, but also, as you'll see as you go through, a very good game designer as well. So shoot 'em up construction kit was a great tool for people like Alf who didn't have the programming background but had ideas for games and wanted a way of actually kind of showcasing those ideas. It became sort of a perfect outlet. But Alf was one of these guys who kind of found, he would hit certain barriers with the tool set. So there is a limit to what games you can create in the shoot 'em up construction kit. But rather than sort of get restricted by these limits, Alf would try and find ingenious ways around them. So one of the things here we see is this guy firing these missiles. He wanted these missiles to kind of explode and then disappear. So to simply do that, you just made the animation go blank towards the end. Very simple, but just an example of trying to sort of bend the tool to make it do what you want. But I mean, that's not really kind of the main innovations that this game contains, and I'll kind of show you some of the main key ones as we sort of progress through. The main thing as well that really stood out about this particular game was that the quality of the attack waves as well. So in a lot of the shoot 'em up construction kit games I played at the time, there wasn't much care put in for where the enemies were placed. Most often they would kind of sort of fire towards you with bullets that rapidly fired that you didn't have a chance to actually kill the enemy. I mean, I kind of had that problem in my own games actually. My early stuff in particular, I'd make the sort of enemies fire rapidly down. It's quite a poor thing to have in your games. But Alf really carefully positioned a lot of the enemies in the game and carefully thought about it. Okay, so here we've got this static screen section for our outside bigots, which I think is the main bad guy in the game. So one of the things in this section that really kind of stood out for me is that a lot of the shoot 'em up construction kit games that I played at the time were kind of like top-down flat games. Everything seemed very flat and taken from like an aerial kind of view. Whereas with this particular section, Alfred came up with a way of showing perspective by just very simply having like a ladders on a building and like these diagonal sort of roof tiles. So essentially he kind of gave this perspective to his games, which I'd not really kind of seen done before, and straight away as I was sort of playing through this I was kind of getting ideas about what sort of games I could do with similar kind of effects. You also had the power up effect as well, which I think Transputer Man had like a power up effect already. It showed you an example of it, but this had quite a few power ups that you could pick up and collect. So actually I don't think it's really that wasn't an innovation as such from the tool. I think that was something that was clearly sort of marked out, something you could do. Okay. Apologies for the screen flicker. So there's a limit with the tool where if you have too many sprites on the screen at once, so the bullets are sprites as well, you'll get flicker on the screen. So yeah, the enemies in the windows as well, so he's just having them quickly animating back and forth and shooting randomly, but he'd have them sort of disappearing every couple of frames as well to give the illusion that they're sort of hiding from the window and then reappearing. Very simple but effective effect. Okay. Some neat biker sprites there as well. So Alf's done quite a few games, so Alf still produces games in the shoot 'em up construction kit today. And if you haven't played them, then I highly recommend checking them out. He still continues to do games in the tool and still manages to come up with sort of innovations which haven't been done before. And there's a lot of other designers as well who are kind of doing very similar things and coming up with new ways of pushing the tool beyond its boundaries. But Cops for me was really the first game where I've actually seen people or someone make the tool do something beyond its intended capabilities. And we're going to kind of see another one of those innovations here. So one of the things that shoot 'em up construction kit has is this kind of static screen effect where you can have multiple different static screens which only stay on the screen for a certain amount of time, and Alf utilizes this to kind of do this sort of animation effect or sort of flip book animation. So with this boat here, as I climb onto the boat, we'll see the sort of dock bridge sort of disappear from sight and give the illusion that you're actually on a boat that's moving. So here we go. So again, that was kind of another idea which straight away I was thinking, how could I sort of make a game that utilises that? And it's something I think I did use in quite a few of my games that I later made. See, we just crashed onto the bridge. So the bridge itself, just using some clever perspective, gives quite a neat, well-designed bridge with only a couple of character blocks. And again, kind of breaking things out of that really boring sort of top-down flat view that most of the games I would see at the time that were done in SEUCK. Here we've got another idea where, as you'll see in a minute. So at the moment the game's mostly been push scroll with a couple of static screens, but here Alf makes really good use of like the automated scroll to give the illusion that we're kind of going up a lift. So here we've got a lift on a scaffold, but how he's done it is we've got this sprite here which is the lift itself, and then once we get to the position of standing on the lift, he then creates a sequence where the screen scrolls and the lift moves with us to make it look like we're actually moving up a lift. Just really simple but very effective. Thrown in with some sprites to give the illusion of an explosion as well. And then here, with just very limited amount of character blocks, we've got a really decent looking skyline as well. So really it was just unlike any SEUCK game that I'd ever seen before, and that's one of the reasons why I have very fond memories of playing it. It's because of the amount of new ideas and new things that I'd seen done with the tool. And this game was the major inspiration for me actually creating my own shoot 'em up construction kit games, and a lot of the sort of innovations and ideas that Alf would come out with I tried to recreate in some of my own games as well. So it is thanks to Alf and his Cops game for, well, I'm guessing some people might not thank me for it, because it means there's more shoot 'em up construction kit games out there, especially if you're not a fan of the games. But it's thanks to Alf that I kind of got making my own games and started to kind of put stuff into the 64 scene. So now we've got the final scene, which is one of my favourite innovations that Alf also came up with. I don't know if he was the guy who invented it, but it's certainly the first time I'd seen anything like it. So here we've got this static truck on a static screen, but we're given the illusion that it's scrolling sideways. Let's see if I can pause it quickly. So I'm going to cheat slightly. I'm just going to quickly flick over and start the second player, because I lost all my lives. By having a blank enemy down in the bottom left hand corner, we've got a blank enemy that's firing street lamp sprites to the right hand side, which gives the illusion that we're scrolling sideways. And then finally we have the big boss character who's firing these bullets, which have a very slight jump in the animation to make it look like he's jumping off the truck. Okay, not doing very well here. There we go. So the sequence is not quite finished. So one of the limitations with SEUCK is that the time's going to run out in a minute, and we're going to restart the game. We're at the end now. I've not quite managed to kill the bad guy. There we go. Just about got him. Okay, and that was Cops. Really great little game. It is quite short, but it's a great showcase of what you can do with a tool, and some really neat ideas in it. And it was the first time I'd ever seen those kind of ideas being done using a tool, and it gave me a lot of inspiration for my own work. Alf still creates SEUCK games today, as I've mentioned. He did a couple of sequels to the Cops games. And it's also done a number of recent games as well. He's doing things like dual control of players, so you have two players in the game in a SEUCK game often. So what he's managed to do is with a little bit of code, has managed to kind of link up the players so you control two at the same time. So you can have like one person as like a sprite being a human being, and the second sprite being like a target that you control, and that kind of thing. And there's lots of other designers as well also making games still today which have some really good, interesting ideas. Highly recommend you kind of have a look on the SEUCK construction kit vault, SEUCKvault.co.uk, which is done by Andrew Fisher. There's quite a big showcase in there of some really neat games, and there's loads of games on GameBase as well. So yeah, there are a lot of rubbish games that are done in the tool, but there are some gems out there, and Cops is certainly one of them. And yeah, that's probably going to be the only SEUCK construction kit game I cover, because this is the one that I have the most fond memories of. So I hope you enjoyed it today, and I'll see you all soon.